Hey everyone, it's me, Rami Marks, your Tangled Yogi out here in Northern California. Welcome to the Itty Bitty Kitty Inktober adventure. I'm so excited to bring this to you. This new series will come out every Friday for the month of October. So let's talk about the things that we're going to need for class today. I'm going to be working with the Identi Pen. This is a nice thick nib pen and really great for filling in the cat that we're going to be working on today. I'll be working with a gel pen. This is the Jelly Roll 10 from Sakura. I'll be also working with the Prismas pen. This is the 05. If you have a Micron PN pen, it is the same pen. I will also be working with a Graphite Pencil. This will help us to build our string today. You know me, I'm a Prismacolor girl, so grab your Prismacolor pencils. We're going to have a lot of fun with this one. And hey, if you don't have Prismacolor pencils, don't worry about it. Grab whatever color pencils you have and play along. Now, I do call this class the Itty Bitty Kitty, and that's because the tiles I'm working on are a little bit smaller. So I've cut paper that is cardstock to 3.5 inches by 3.5 inches. And if you don't have cardstock, you can go ahead and just make a square that's 3.5 inches by 3.5 inches and put that in your sketchbook and play. All right, so let's get started with the Itty Bitty Kitty series. Many of you know that I like to do a little centering exercise before we get started with class. So let's go ahead and take a comfortable seated position in our chairs. Allow your shoulders to melt away from your ears. Let your feet touch down onto the floor. You can allow your hands to rest in your lap. And if you're okay with it, allow your eyes to close for a minute. Let your attention come to your breath. And on the inhalation through the nose, feeling the coolness of the breath on the nostrils. And as you exhale through the mouth, noticing the heat of the breath in the mouth. As you inhale, noticing coolness. And as you exhale, noticing heat. And one last time, inhaling and exhaling. And in your own timing now, wiggling in your fingertips and wiggling in your toes. And if you have your eyes closed, gently blinking them open. And let's get ready to create. Let's start by picking up our graphite pencil here, and we're going to bring our dots into our corners here, and you can see that I'm keeping my frame fairly narrow for this piece. So I'm going to go ahead and start to connect the dots. Turning the tile as I go, making it work for my hands here. And then to build our string, what we're going to do is we're going to start by coming into this corner right here, and we're going to come out about 1/2 inch and just make a little dot there. I'm going to do the same thing at the bottom, coming up from this corner about 1/2 inch and making a dot. Let me go ahead and zoom in on that a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and start to create a soft curve for our moon today. And just connecting those two together like so. And I'll go ahead and define that a little bit better so that you can see it. And so this is going to be our string for today's class. So you go ahead and do yours. I'm going to finish up mine, and then when we come back, I'm going to start to introduce the cat. Let's go ahead and start to build our cat. You can see that I've got my graphite pencil here, And we're going to be using the Tangle Flux for this, and Flux is just that upside down teardrop shape that we use so much in Zentangle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by using that tangle and lean it on its side. So I'll start by just coming up, leaning that flux over and reconnecting. Now once I have that, I'm going to start by putting a nice circle right on the back end of that teardrop so you can see that it's not towards the front, it's leaning more towards the back. I'm going to go ahead and come in and start to bring in a little bit of a soft triangle. It's got a little bit of a curve right on the top of the head there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to use some lines that are going to kind of create an angulation in the face of our cat here. So you can see that instead of doing those soft lines, I've got almost part of a hexagon there. You can see it as I zoom in. I'm also going to use this as a way of softening in here just a little bit. Now once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to come down and I'm going to do this nice curved line that's just going to go a little bit past where Flux is right here. I'm going to work on the back side of the cat, giving this a nice curve for his neck. And then I'm going to let it start to come all the way down and just land right underneath where those two lines are meeting. To create the foot, I'm just going to do a little arc, just like so. Once I have that, I'm going to close it off. Now, I'm going to pick up my Identi Pen. This is my thick nib pen. I love this pen for doing silhouetted work. And so all I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm just going to work within the lines that we've created here. So you can see that I'm not too worried about what's going on in the interior. I'm just working inside. And you can see that I'm just going to close it off, and then I'm going to create the little foot. Once I have that, I can come in and start to pool my ink. And already you can see that the cat is really starting to come into play. And then once I have that, I can come in with a nice white pen. I'm going to pick up my Jelly Roll 10. You can see that this is the Jelly Roll 10 that I'll be working with. And I'm just going to get it started, and I'll just come up about halfway and start to create where his leg is, and then I'll come back to where his little haunches are and let it drop down. And that's how we're going to build our cat today. Let's start to bring that into our piece here. So I'm just going to start by coming away from the side just a little bit, and I'm just going to come down towards the bottom here and start to build that flux, that elongated flux, as it's going to work its way up. And I would say that I'm probably at the midway point of that bottom line here as I go ahead and come up, create that leaning flux, and then I'm going to just drop it right back down again. I'm going to zoom in so that you can really see it. I'm going to start to build the head of the cat here. You can see that I'm leaning towards the back side. And there's going to be the head, right? Once I have that the way that I want it, I'm going to go ahead and start to bring in that ear. There's his ear. You can soften it up if you want to. And then I'll start to just make some lines that are more angulated, that are working down the side of the face of the cat. So it's almost like you're building a hexagon. Once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and come in right where the chest is and start to drop down and curve in just a little bit and then drop out again. So you can see it almost bows in there a little bit. I'll come down, doing that soft curve, and then I'm going to add in that back side of the neck in here. Now if you want to give his body a little bit more drama, you can come in and just round it off a little bit on the back side there, and that's fine. Now if you're like me and you don't want to see any kind of graphite lines underneath your pen, you can pick up an eraser and just bring out those lines that are on the inside so that you're not going to see any graphite. And then you can start to pick up your pen. So I'm going to come in here and just softly bring in his little ear, or her little ear. I keep saying he because all of these cats are actually based off of a cat that I knew many years ago. His name was Mystery, and he was my next door neighbor's cat, and he was just the sweetest. And he was a black and white kitty, but mostly black. He had a little tuxedo in the front. So then once I have this, you're going to see me come in and pool my ink inside of the cat. You can see that I'm really just taking my time, bringing it down. Super fun, super easy. And just continuing to pull your way through. I love working with these silhouetted animals. It's wonderful to work with them. It brings such drama into a piece and really can showcase these beautiful tangles so nicely. Turning the tile to make it work for my hands here. And so here we have our itty bitty kitty. If you want, you can get more dramatic by just coming out and bringing a little bit more of a chest on him if you want to, which I think is kind of cool. And then I'm going to go ahead and pick up my jelly roll again, and I'll start to bring in that line for the leg. It just starts with a soft curve and then drops down, and then I can come back and work with the haunches. And I always think of a question mark when I'm doing this. So there's the haunch. And then of course I can come in and do some white whiskers into it so that we've got that cat face the way that we want it. So, play, make it your own, and then when we come back, we're going to start to do some tangling around the piece here. You'll notice that I have not put in the whiskers in black on this piece. I like to wait until the very end for that. Okay, so we're going to start to build the piece just a little bit here. And I've got my graphite pencil in my hand here. We're going to be working with a tangle called Viston. And Viston, I like it because it really mimics tipple to me. It can bring the party to a piece, is what I'm saying. So I'm just going to start with my pencil here, and I'm going to make a series of circles here, and some of them are going to be large, and some of them are going to be medium-sized, and some of them are going to be small. So here comes a large one right there, and then I think I'm going to do a nice small one right here, and then I'll do a medium-sized one right here. Love the idea of this going behind the moon. And then I'm going to drop down and do maybe another small one right here. And then a fairly large one right in here. Could be fun to have one just kind of float off the page right there. And maybe in front of the cat, we could put in a fairly large one. And then maybe a smaller one right in here. And you can see already that this is starting to get a real kind of party atmosphere in there. Now, what I'm going to do is I am going to pick up a little bit of my eraser, and I'm going to erase part of the moon here so that it appears that this festoon is going to be in front of the moon. Now, I'm going to do this in a technique called wallpaper, and wallpaper is where you're tangling with the color that you're coloring with. Now, I have two different colors I'm going to be working with. I'm going to work with violet, which is PC932, and I'm also going to work with Daliah Purple, which is PC1009. I'll also be working with white from Prisma, which is PC938. So let's learn festoon, and festoon is one of those easy tangles. It's a great one to start with. So I'm going to start with the Daliah Purple first, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to do an overdraw on my piece here. You want to make sure that your pencil is good and sharpened up when you do this. Now, once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and right in the center, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create an orb or a dot. And I'm going to give this a little bit of pressure here. Once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a nice curved line that's going to come in, and I'm just going to work my way around the orb. Turning the tile as you go. Take your time with it. And just continuing to turn. So you can see I've gone all the way around now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come out to the edge, and I'm just going to connect it with a little bit of a dot. Just going around. Now, to create the shading for festoon, all I'm going to do is I'm going to come back in, but really, really lightly with my pencil. I'm going to start to shade around that center point. But nice and light. I'm going to go out to the outer rim, and I'm going to start to bring in a shading from the outer rim. And what you'll start to see is that I get this beautiful sheen of white that circles that interior piece. Now, whenever I'm looking at this tangle, I always think of a really pretty parasol. The beautiful painted parasols, I always think of those. Almost like you're looking down from the top or from the sky, and you can see all these people walking around with their parasols. Once I've got that nicely shaded, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start to give this a little bit of a press on the right-hand side, creating a little bit of interest. And later on, when we come back in with a little bit of our white pen, we'll have a really pretty spot to put a beautiful sheen in there as well. Once I've got that the way I want it, I'm going to pick up that white pen, or rather that white pencil. This is PC938, and I'm just going to start to lightly blur or blend my color. You can see that I'm dipping into each of these triangles and doing little circles, and what that's doing is it's bringing an organicness to the shading itself, keeping it nice and soft, no hard lines in there. And then I'll start to work from the inside out, and you'll notice that I'm really trying to keep that white in there, and that just gives this a really nice feeling. And just to give you a little point of reference here, I'll bring in my original piece and you can see how nice and soft that looks, and then later on we'll be able to bring a little bit of sheen in there. So I'm going to intersperse my colors, and I'll start to do festoon in purple and then come back to the Daliah Purple and then the violet. And so you can change up your colors as much or as little as you like. And for me, there's just something about breaking it up and bringing in the different colors. I'll go ahead and bring back in my original. You can see here's the Daliah Purple and then the violet and the Daliah and the violet, just interspersing it all the way throughout. So go ahead and have fun with these. Really just let yourself play. One of the things that I like to do is, after I've had a chance to go around and shade, I might come back in and reiterate some of those lines again and just give them a little bit of love. If I've lost any lines that just don't have the definition, I can come right back in again with that original color and just redefine the space there. Now the other thing that I'm going to do with this is I'm going to go ahead and start to pick up a little bit of my white. This is the Jelly Roll 10 that I'm going to be working with, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in and very softly in the darkest spot on your festoon here, just bring in a little bit of sheen and maybe a couple of orbs on either side. And you can see how that brings a little bit of interest into the piece. I'll go ahead and come in here and bring a little bit back in here. And you can make these as light or as dark as you want them to be. But you can see when I bring this up nice and close that it just brings that really nice sheen into the piece here. Now granted, sometimes what will happen is the ink will take on the color that's below it, and you can always come back in right over the top of it, and that should stop it from taking that color on again. Sometimes layering is the way to go with that white pen. But I love the way that this is looking already. It's got such a feeling of almost like that background is floating behind that cat. Pretty magical. We're going to let go of the purples and we're going to start to move into the blues here. I have light aqua, which is PC922, and then I also have the Copenhagen Blue, which is PC906. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a little bit of that darker blue first, and you can see that my pencil is really well sharpened up here. I'm just going to very, very lightly start to work on the side of that pencil and rub it into the paper here, just getting a really light foundation of color. And you're going to see me dance between the festoons here, just bringing in a little bit of those blues. So just starting with that darker blue, and remember, if you're not working with the same colors as I am, just try to get into the same hue. That will be just fine. So I'm just going in, bringing in those blues. And once I've gotten a pretty good dusting of that blue in there, and I'm going to even work around the cat in here, I'm going to start to bring in a little bit of pressure around the perimeters. And so when I say that, I'm really talking about the perimeter of the moon and the perimeter of the piece itself. So what it will look like is I'm working with the Copenhagen Blue still, and all I'm doing is adding a little bit of pressure. I would say this is medium pressure. And just getting in there. Coming down along the edge. Let's get right in there. And then I'll define the outside edge a little bit. And really just using medium pressure. You don't have to get too heavy with it. Little circles with that pencil, because what I'm trying to do is get almost just a soft mist of that color. I don't want a hard line. Coming back in, redefining where the moon is. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up that lighter blue, and I want to treat this like a watercolor, make it really feel soft. And so all I'm going to do is just start to blur out those edges of where the medium blue is and just soften it up. So where that darker blue is meeting the medium blue, I'm just softening it up. I'll come up in here and soften that in there. Same thing over here. Once I've got that the way that I want it, I can pick back up that white pencil again. Make sure there's no purple on your pencil here. And then I'm just going to come in with little circles and soften up the blues. And you can see as I'm running that white pencil over the blues, I'm getting this really beautiful color combination of where that light aqua is meeting that Copenhagen blue. And just softening it up. And you can go back and forth with this and redefine your darker pieces or make them lighter. It's really up to you how you want to see that background. So go ahead and play with the background in here, see how you like it, and then when we come back, we're going to start to work with the moon. We're going to let go of the blues here, and we're going to start to bring in our warm colors. So in my hand I happen to have the yellow ochre, which is PC 942, and I also have in my hand cadmium orange, which is the PC 118. Now remember, if you're not working with the same color pencils, just get in the same hue. I just love this one because it has a little bit of earthiness to it, and this orange also has a little bit more of that earthiness to it as well. So to get that harvest moon type of feel, I'm going to start with the yellow first, and you can see that I'm pretty well sharpened up. I'm going to go ahead and start to just rub that pencil into the paper and start to define the moon. Now I'm being very careful not to touch that purple that's on the festoon in there, because I don't want to pull that into the piece. Okay. Now, what I love about working on the side of the pencil is that you can make pretty quick business of your moon here. And just dusting it in, using little circles, working on the side of the pencil, and being mindful of the cat. Turning and making it work for you. Once you have that nice foundation of yellow in there, you're going to switch over into the orange color. So I'm going to pick up that really nice cadmium orange here, and I'm just going to start to work on the edge of the moon. Now, part of the reason why I love having this purple here is because orange and purple really play so amazingly off of each other. So I'll go ahead and let that shadow come in to the moon. And then right along the edge of the moon, I'm just going to start to play it up a little bit. Starting to work my way through the side here, and then I'm going to also work up the actual side of the piece. And that's really going to give this a nice definition all the way through. You can see that I'm working the pencil in little circular motions, trying to get a really soft touch with that pencil. Once I've got enough of that orange in there, I'm going to start to push a little bit harder right along the edge. Getting a really nice definition between the blue and the orange here. I wanted it to have a painterly quality to it, which is why I didn't define the outside edge of the moon with black. I wanted it to be softer. Same thing in here, getting a little bit of definition. And over in here. Now once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and start to bring back in that yellow. And you'll notice that I'm breaking up the line of demarcation where the orange is meeting the original yellow that we put down into the piece. Now I would say that I'm using a medium pressure on this pencil, and you'll start to notice that I'm going to leave a little bit of a halo around my cat. Working down over here, blending up that orange. Turning the page a little bit and breaking this up some more. Leaving that soft halo of that lighter yellow all around the cat. And you can go back and forth with this and get it the way that you want it to be. So go ahead and play. You often hear me talking about how I love to turn my color pencils into what I think a watercolor would look like. I'm going to take a little bit of that yellow ochre, and I'm just going to come back into that background here, and you're going to see me just start to rub a little bit of that yellow ochre over some of the places where I have that lighter blue. And what it's doing is it's just making that background a little bit more interesting. And you can see that I'm doing this in a more random way. But those little highlights and those little movements in the background can really make a piece much more interesting. And so just by using a little bit of that yellow ochre over the top of those lighter blue places, you'll get this really interesting watercolor type feel to the piece, and I really love the way that that looks. Now in my original piece, I felt as though I had a missed opportunity inside of that moon, and so I'm going to go back and do something a little different inside of that moon, and I'm going to introduce another tangle, and this is called Shattuck. And Shattuck is one of those great tangles where you can do so much with it. So I'm going to use Shattuck inside of these columns here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to layer Shattuck in between the two columns. So Shattuck is basically where you have these lines that come down, and I usually pair them in threes if I can. And so all I'm doing is going back and forth and bringing them through. Now here's the beauty of Shattuck. You can go in now to the other place or the other column and start to build off of that. So you can see that I can even come in here and build off of this, and then I can weave back and forth and make my way upward and out. It's a really fun tangle, and it actually makes a beautiful background. So let's go ahead and bring it into the moon. And remember, if you don't want to bring it into your moon, you're welcome to just leave it as it is. So I'm going to start by sharpening up my pencils here, and you always want to have a really well sharpened pencil whenever you are going to go in and do wallpaper. And I'm going to start now with my orange. This is the Cadmium Orange here. You can see I've got a really strong tip. I might just break it just a little bit so that it doesn't get in my way later. Very softly now, I'm going to come in about a half an inch away from the edge, and I'm very, very lightly going to be dropping down 2 lines. And you can see that I'm weaving them behind the cat here. So just bringing them down to the best of your ability, nice and light, so not really, really heavy. Once I have that, I'm going to start to build Shattuck through the piece here. So I'm just going to go ahead and go and start the lines. And I'm not pressing hard. You know, I have enough of that pigment that I can start to move in both directions just fine. Starting to come out. And over. Really, really soft. Once I have that, I'm going to start to look for where I can bring Shattuck in through the other side here. So you can see that I'm just looking for those spaces where I can guide it over. And I'll start to work my way through, looking for little places where I can bring it in behind the cat. And on this side, I'm going to just go ahead and start again. So it will look a little something like this. I'll just start to build off of it, keeping a nice light touch on your pencil. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can build that through just a little bit. Same thing over here. And you can see that it brings that beautiful texture into the moon without taking away from the cat, which I really love. Super fun, super playful. Really love the way that that looks. So you go ahead and do yours. I'm going to work on mine for a little bit. I'm going to start to bring the tail into the piece here. I'm going to go ahead and grab my graphite pencil and just start to make an S-like shape that's going to come down right from the edge of the moon, and then it's going to go over festoon and then reattach to our cat. And that's going to give me a really nice guide as I come back in with my Identi Pen. Now I love the Identi Pen for going over color and whatnot, so if you don't have the Identi Pen, you can use your Micron. You just want to go nice and light with it. So I'm just going to come in with that Identi Pen on the fine side and make that S curve. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to give a little bit of weight in certain parts of the tail here. And I'll go ahead and very lightly pull my ink right over festoon and right over the moon. And if you wanted to be really playful, you could put a little fescue on the end of your tail, just to keep it fun and tangly. Now I am also going to pick up my Micron again, and we're going to work with the whiskers. So I'm just going to go ahead and go in and create these little whiskers going off of the side of his face right in here. And then some of you may notice that I had to start the video again with my cat. I had a mishap with the recording, so I'll go ahead and put back in my white whiskers on this side as well, which looks really fun, I think. So go ahead and do yours, and then when we come back, we're going to do some final touches. So I've brought back in my original piece here, and you can see that my cat was a little bit larger than it is in this one. And you can also see that in the background on this one, I added a little bit of printemps in there. And, you know, I sometimes do different things on different projects, and it kind of helps me to, you know, express myself in a different way. Now I will zoom in on this here so that you can see printemps, and I also did some dots inside of my printemps just to give it a little bit of interest. So if you want to add that into your piece over here, you're more than welcome to do that. The other thing I did with this one is I had a darkened border in here, and on this one I have it light. Now you can go in with your Identi Pen and do your borders nice and dark, and that will give you that really dramatic feel, or you can have it nice and light like this one is, and it just feels light and airy to me. So it's a really fun way to play. Okay, well, that is it for today. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and put my chop into the piece here, and that just signifies that I've had a minute to take a look at this and offer gratitude for this time to tangle and have a time out from the rest of the world. So if you enjoyed the class, please give it a thumbs up or leave a nice comment in the comments section. And even better, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And even best, share the class with a friend. If you know somebody who does Zentangle and you think that they would like to do Inktober in this way, please, please, please share it with them. And I'd love to see all of your creations over on our Tangled Yogi Art community page. Or if you do social media like Instagram, go ahead and tag me as Tangled Yogi in your Inktober, or you could do the Itty Bitty Kitty Inktober Adventure as a hashtag as well. All right, thanks so much for being with me today. I look forward to tangling with you soon. Bye for now.